Exploring the Bazaar. Your e-ticket ride into the world of the paranormal. Strap yourself in as we traverse the universe exploring the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology, as well as other dimensions. It's time to take back the night. Now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bazaar, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
What are we doing out here in the middle of all these windmills? They're getting me a bit dizzy, spinning around and around and around.
Oh boy, your head is always spinning around and around and around. Couldn't you guess we're out here doing scientific research? What else do we do? There's been a number of cases, where UFOs seem to be attracted to windmills and wind turbines. There's a case from 1897. Now, I know that's going back a long time ago, and you and I were just country bumpkins then, but we're going to discuss this case tonight. It's a case where a cigar-shaped object dove into a windmill on Judge Proctor's ranch, killing the small humanoid occupant. Little fellow. Yeah.
That's a famous. That's a really famous case. Someone even stole his grave marker, and the government may have snatched the dead body away in the middle of the night.
Yep, you got it. You got it all right. And there's another case in England in recent years where a craft of some sort twisted the blade of a wind turbine into what looked like a pretzel. And there were UFO sightings around at the time, and it made the front page of one of the tabloids over there.
Huh. Okay. Do you think that might happen while we're here right now in this field with windmills?
Oh, anything is possible on Exploring the Bazaar. Hey, I think I see a bright light coming toward us from the horizon. What do you think we should do?
Oh, okay. My best bet is that we get out of here, and before we become a dust in the wind. You never know what those crazy-ass saucer pilots are capable of.
Well, that does... All right. Well, there does seem to be enough of a wind current to get us back to the KCOR studios in Vegas, so follow me. We need to get away from that light before it gets any closer anyway. I think it's about ready to crash into one of these wind turbines just about right now.
Okay, this is not the brightest thing we've ever done. Let's go.
Up into that wind current. Whoa. Well, that was some breeze, man.
It was.
Yeah. There's always a breeze of one kind or another. Oh, I swear, man. I'm exhausted from that little trip, to say the least. But we're safely home now, I think, aren't we?
Yes, we're home.
I think I saw Tina as we crashed through the roof. Yeah.
One of these days, she's going to make us pay for all the damage we keep doing to the
studio. But hey, we boost the ratings. Come on. The ratings are through the roof. So what's a little couple of co-hosts. Anyway, enough jibber jabbering here, and we want to get on with our program tonight because we have a very interesting subject to conquer, to talk about, and I've got a very interesting synchronicity that maybe somebody can help me answer. I need answers. So why don't you tell us who we will be speaking with?
Be my pleasure, Tim. Well, we have a return visit from KERRY TRENT HAGGARD. Now, KERRY is a devoted antique car collector, judge, and restorer for the better part of 25 years. Now, KERRY is the founder, writer, and host of Wheels of the Past Productions, based in Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania. Now, KERRY is a longtime enthusiast of classic horror and UFOs, and he became interested in the story that in April 1897, a UFO crashed into a windmill outside of Aurora, Texas. The Aurora, Texas UFO crash fascinated Kerry because of his own experience as a kid seeing a UFO land in his hometown. Now, taking that passion, along with his friend John Cochran, they spent the next several months working to form an outline for a screenplay based on the fictional hunt for the extraterrestrial buried in the Aurora cemetery. Well, from there, the screenplay grew into the novel Traveler. Now, Kerry has also contributed a chapter, or is mentioned, in the new book, Alien Lives Matter.
It's quite a long story. He's got quite a big section of the chapter. Yeah.
But in the new book, Alien Lives Matter, It's Okay to Be Gray, published by, guess who? Timothy Green Beckley, Interlight Global Communications.
Whoa. Thank you, Tim. And thank you for Ken. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you back, back on. Just before we start, though, I did want to mention something. You know, how I recently decided to get back in contact with you because I had a renewed interest in the Aurora crash there. I was doing research for the book because we have a whole section on alien bodies. And this was certainly one of the first cases where a UFO crash, took place, and I was going to say lone survivor, but he didn't survive very long. If he survived at all, was found. Okay, I was doing a little bit of research on this, and of course, almost everybody knows that the crash took place on Judge Proctor's ranch in Aurora, Texas, in 1897. That's a given. However, I was also doing a little bit of research on the Roswell UFO crash, and I always put a great deal of significance in synchronicities. Well, do you know that along with Mac Brazel, the gentleman who found the wreckage on his ranch there outside of Roswell, he was accompanied by a young teenage boy by the name of John Proctor. Now, I want to know, is there any chance in hell that the Don Proctor there at the Roswell crash may have been related to Judge Proctor? I would not be surprised because we have all sorts of synchronicities and coincidences that take place in ufology that are just beyond chance and circumstance. Would you happen to know anything about that, Ken? Does that ring a bell with you?
No, it doesn't ring. Not to me, it doesn't.
Okay. Well, let's go back. Maybe we should set this case up for people who are not familiar with it. Why don't you give us a little background on what happened in that fateful day in April of 1897?
Well, it was like 6 o'clock in the morning, April 17th, 1897, and Aurora, Texas, was a little Dust Bowl town that had suffered a lot of trauma. They had a fire that burned down half the town. They had a spotted fever epidemic. The railroad had bypassed them, and it was a bad crop year. So they just had all kinds of problems. But early in the morning, a lot of the folks awoke to a loud crash, and a single extraterrestrial craft had lost control, slammed into the windmill, and hit their local water tower, where the craft and the water tower both exploded. So just at sunrise, they all go running out there to see what has happened. Of course, there was a guy that did articles for the Dallas newspaper that was there, and he reported it in the newspaper the very next day. They found the alien. They found the remnants of the crash, and the alien was dead. So they did what they would do for anybody of high profile then. They made him his own little coffin. They put him on display on the boardwalk for the afternoon, and they buried him in their local cemetery the next day. And that more or less is the gist of the story.
Now, what did the craft? Is there any description of what the craft may have looked like?
Yeah, it's reported in the newspaper. It was a cigar-shaped object. So it was one of the ones that are longer rather than one of the ones that are round.
Okay, I got you.
So it said. They called it a cigar-shaped object. So we would have to think it was an oblong craft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, of course, there've been a lot of sightings of cigar-shaped object. I'm thinking of another one that was taken, of course, in more recent years by Carol Wayne Watts in Texas. He was driving back to his ranch or property and saw this object in the sky and took a series of photographs of it, and looks more like a cigar, a cigar or elongated object of some type. And he managed to get photographs, or at least he claimed, and he did publish a couple of them of the beings that were being that was on board the ship. Now, what did the Aurora alien supposedly look like?
Small, large eyes, tiny openings for ears, very small nose. Your typical gray description.
About how tall would you say? About how tall?
4 to 5 feet. From the descriptions, they didn't say that exactly, but from what they called him a small traveler, and wearing a bright metallic.
That's the title of your book, right? Traveler.
Correct.
Traveler.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, now I see where you got the title. Did anybody? Well, obviously somebody touched the alien or the being or whatever he might have been, because they had to put him in a coffin to bury him. Is there any description as to what that of the skin texture?
Didn't. I've never found anything that they said the skin texture other than maybe scaly. I did see somewhere where it was. They claimed it was a little on the scaly side, and he was wearing a silver one-piece outfit, very similar in color and structure to the outside of his craft.
Mm-hmm. Now you say the alien was put on display on the Boardwalk. Are we talking that Aurora is near a beach, or is that just the term you're using?
That's the Boardwalk. This is an old West town. So back then, when the outlaws would come into town and get shot, they would hang a little sign on them and put them on the little. When I say Boardwalk, I just mean the front porches of the buildings, because they were all in a row.
Yeah. Well, I'm showing my Texas ignorance, but yes, I know what you mean. It kind of kept the mud away from the establishments. Yeah, if you went into one of the saloons or into the bank or something, you have something to click your feet on and take the mud off.
Exactly.
With, I would guess. Okay. So, how seriously do you take this? I mean, you've done a lot of research into it. Do you think there's a better than 50-50 chance that this actually took place?
Well, it's funny because when I was doing all my research for Traveler, before he passed on, I had a couple of conversations with Jim Mars, and I guess Jim Mars probably did more research and knew more about the Aurora crash than anyone out there. And when I told him what I was doing, he was tickled to hear that somebody was making some noise about the Aurora crash, because it's like the forgotten one. And and he told me that in the last conversation we had, that it had come to light, somebody had contacted him recently, that their great-great-grandmother or the great-great-grandmother passed it on or something, a photograph of the alien on the boardwalk, and like the sheriff's on one side and the undertaker's on the other side, and there's a couple of girls in the background and a dog in the front. And it was one of those tintype photographs that etched on metal plate or glass or something. Somebody had contacted him and knew enough about it where it piqued his interest, where he thought it may be a real deal, and he was on the trail of trying to track this down. Now, since then, soon after, he passed on, and I haven't heard anything about this afterwards. So I don't know if he got it and it never got out, if it's still in his collection or paperwork, or if he never got it in his hands or what. But that was the story he told me.
Well, that's intriguing indeed. I just thought of another synchronicity here. The actual researcher who I think wrote the first article in Modern Time was a fellow that I knew by the name of Hayden Hughes. And the individual who wrote the article in 1897, his name was Hayden as well.
Correct.
So
Hayden.
Yeah. So you've got two. Now, if they were related and the Proctors were related, I don't know what that would prove. It would be prove, like I've always said, that we're living in a computer simulation or the Matrix or something really, really bizarre is going on here. But something like that would probably be. We'd have to find somebody who was into doing research along that line, which is not quite my cup of tea, but it's certainly worth getting into. So now, the corpse of the dead little alien was put into the cemetery. In fact, in our book, there is a photograph of you standing next to what I believe is an impromptu grave. It's not the original, but it must be one. I don't know whether you set it up or tourists did, and you're standing right next to it. What happened to the original tombstone?
The original tombstone from 1897 was a very inexpensive, because the town was broke. Yeah. Nobody had any money, so nobody's going to spend any money on the gravestone for this thing. It was a very thin, very cheap stone, but it was a stone. And on it, they had carved a depiction of what his craft looked like. A cigar, I hesitate to use the cigar shape, but anyway, his craft with two round porthole type lights in it, a depiction of what he crashed in. The original stone, and there's a photograph of it in the mid to late 50s of a young man with 1957 attire on, kneeling beside it. At that time, since 1897, it had deteriorated so much that about half of the stone had literally eroded away, so that only half of it was left at the time. In 1973, when UPI picked up the story and all the hoopla started and everybody went out there and wanted to dig up the grave and everything, someone stole that original stone in the middle of the night. So after everything settled down, the Aurora, the city of Aurora, made another one, sort of a duplicate of that. And it was there till, I think, 2006 or 7, and it was stole as well.
Yeah.
So now they have that boulder. They moved that huge boulder in there on top of the grave. And and like you said, since I've been on your show the last time, I was lucky enough to visit there a couple of years ago. And, and people from all over the country stopped. And visit and leave little trinkets on it, little alien trinkets or coins or stuff. So he is far from forgotten.
It's interesting. We talk about the craft hitting Judge Proctor's windmill, but there have been over the years a number of cases involving UFOs and accidents with the windmills crashing into them. And more recently, since we don't have that many windmills, we have wind turbines, which is the modern day version of a windmill. And we've got any number of cases, I think one or two here in the U.S., but mainly in England, where something or other crashed into one of the turbine blades and turned it into a pretzel. In fact, the case made the front page of the one of the British tabloids, The Sun, I think it is. And I've even seen a couple of clips from the UK, that were on, I guess they're on YouTube now, but originally were broadcast on one of the stations there. And there were UFO sightings involved. I mean, it wasn't just that something hit the wind turbine, but people had seen strange objects in the sky. Now, the skeptics were saying, "Oh, it was just a fireworks display," but the people who witnessed this seem to have suggested otherwise. Did you ever come across any other cases in your own investigation?
No. I heard basically what you just said, but other ones that I could bring up, I've never heard of anymore. It does seem like that several have been crashed into over the last 200 years that.
I guess they're big and tall, and maybe the aliens don't know what they are, or maybe they're trying to suck some sort of energy out of it, although I wouldn't think that a windmill or a turbine would have that much energy. There's a new movie out about UFOs and volcanoes. UFOs are seen going into these volcanoes during eruption time, and that would seem to have a heck of a lot more energy involved than it than a windmill or a wind turbine would. Anybody ever interview the judge himself?
He was out of town. The judge was out of town when this happened, and he only got back a day or two after all this was over with. I think they had already buried the alien by the time he got back.
Okay. So, were there? How many witnesses were actually? You say buried the alien, and there's a woodcut or two in the book. It shows that the town folks or whoever might be in the illustration with the coffin. Were any other witnesses ever mentioned? Did you do any research into that, trying to collaborate it?
Well, the newspaper reported at the time that people from all over the area were gathering in Aurora to see the craft, the remains of the craft, and the fallen alien, or fallen traveler, however you want to describe him, because they didn't have the word alien to use at that time.
No, I wouldn't guess not. No.
All right, gentlemen, let me interrupt you here, gentlemen, because we have to go to our bottom of the hour break. When we come back, we will continue our conversation about the Aurora, Texas UFO crash. So stay tuned for more. Welcome back to Exploring the Bazaar. I'm Tim Swartz. Tonight, our guest is KERRY TRENT HAGGARD, and he is the author of the novel Traveler, which is based on the Aurora, Texas UFO crash of 1897. And of course, KERRY is featured in a section of our new book, Alien Lives Matter. It's Okay to Be Gray, now on sale at your favorite bookstore or Amazon.com. So, KERRY, I'm interested in, there's in your bio that I read at the beginning of the show, you mentioned your own UFO experience, where you said that you saw a UFO land in your hometown. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
That was the most prevalent memory of my childhood. I'll never forget it as long as I live. My dad, he worked for the local police department. Now, this is a little town in northeast Georgia called Commerce, Georgia. So it's, little peanut town. And he worked for the local police department, which was more or less a old renovated filling station. And this was 1973 during the what they call the Great UFO Wave of 1973-74. And there had been UFO reports all over the country, but we had a lot of those in northeast Georgia. It was really the talk. And one night he was on duty, and calls started coming in that a UFO had landed at the medical center clinic. Now, the medical center clinic was a big building of doctor's offices right across the street from the hospital. Just so happened my mom worked at the medical center clinic. She'd been a nurse there for 10 or 15 years. So we went tearing off over there, and as we got there, there was one police car and a fire truck and 3 or 4 other people that had probably heard the same thing on their police band radio. And there was no UFO. But in the corner of the parking lot, there was a huge smoking circle that's probably 30 feet around. And we all walked up and looked at it and saw it. And there were molten drops of metal that looked like silver or lead all the way around. And the pavement was red hot. And it literally burned a hole in the asphalt parking lot. So, that to me was about as much proof as you could ever get without actually seeing the thing land or take off or sitting there. Because in the short time that these people had called in saying that this flying saucer had landed, that we got over there, then it had landed and then took off again. And just as a footnote to that, the next day, half the town was over there looking at that because, little town rumors really start flying. People hear all about it. And in the middle of the night, on a Sunday night, no less, that whole parking lot was repaved. So that entire section where all this happened and all the traffic was going over to take a look at it was repaved and covered up. So it was only available to see there for a very short time before whoever ordered that parking lot repaved. And in the middle of the night, like I said, it was like the next morning people were going to work and looking over there and the parking lot's re-asphalted.
That was going to be my second question. How long did it take him to re-asphalt the parking lot?
About 3 days.
3 days.
About 3 days. And a crew had moved in there on Sunday night, and by the next morning it was done and they were gone.
Well, that's around the same time period of the famous Pascagoula UFO case.
Yep. Hey, you remember they also did that in the Crash Landing case. They came and paved the highway over, and then there was another incident. I think it's also in the book where they did the same thing. I think down in Virginia, where this thing had left a circular mark on the I was going to say highway, but it's probably a side road, and they came and paved it. Now, you mean to tell me that the roads department is in collusion with the military? That's kind of hard to swallow, but I guess they have their own road crew that comes out in the middle of the night and tars everything down, I guess. I don't know. Very strange, right?
Well, go ahead, Gary.
I was going to say, you get the military call up some asphalting company and say, it doesn't matter what it costs. You're going to be there at this time, and you're going to do this job from dusk till dawn.
Yeah, exactly. And plus, if the case in your town, if that happened in, like a private parking lot, it could very well been, the owners just tired of people coming around, blocking everything and looking at it and just like, let's just cover it up.
Possibly, but that whole facility was owned by the hospital. So, I never heard that mentioned before. I guess it is a possibility, but nobody ever come out and said, well, the hospital had it done to quieten things down. Now that the hospital was getting more advertising from that than they'd got in a long time.
Come to have your appendix out and look at the UFO landing sites.
So, and just as a footnote, in the UFO annals, there was another sighting in Danielsville, Georgia, at almost exactly the same time. Well, Danielsville, Georgia, is 20 miles from Commerce, so it was during that exact same time that some people claimed that a UFO landed in the middle of the road. Was when this happened. So it was there had been a lot of reports going on in our area during that time.
Mm. Yeah, the 1973 UFO flap. There was a lot of activity, especially down south. Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Tennessee,
right.
places like that. So yeah, that's really interesting. But now, let's talk about your friend John Cochran. Now, he was the one who first clued you in about the Aurora crash.
Yeah, he told me about it. I'd never heard about it before, and he was an outlaw biker for most of his youth, so he had some really good stories to tell, and I wanted to incorporate them into something that I was doing. And when he told me about this Aurora thing, it just all sort of fell together. So the book is not only a novel, but it's a very historically accurate telling of the Aurora crash, but with a twist. It is a novel, so the ending of it is certainly not what happened in real life and the situation that there is today. But I did want to make an entertaining story because the whole idea was a screenplay, and I have a hell of a good screenplay written for it if I could ever find the right person to pick it up and run with it. But it does cover the Aurora crash pretty well.
So has anybody expressed any kind of interest at all in taking an option out on the screenplay?
No, not yet. I'm still looking, so hopefully somebody out there will hear it and say, oh, I want to read that. So, I'd be more than glad to let them smoke it over and see what they think.
Well, it's a great story, and I agree with you. I mean, that would be something that would really make a fantastic movie.
Yeah, that was the whole idea. The novel was sort of a second thought because after I had the screenplay written and a few people read it, they're like, "Oh my God, you got to expand this a little bit," and of course, a little bit turned into another year, and put this into a book, and so that's how it all came about.
Well, and what's been the reaction to the novel? Because I think when we had you on the first time, you had just put it out. So now that some time has passed, have you gotten a lot of good response for it?
Well, it's been a slow seller. As a matter of fact, Flying Disc Press over in England that published it originally has moved on to other things, and so it's back in my hands now. I'm looking for a new publisher that will take it and do the just deserve to it that it needs. So again, anybody out there,
I'll tell you somebody off the air who might be interested in.
Okay. All right. Well,
good enough. Yeah.
That's good. I'd be more than glad to send them a copy and let them run with it. Because now it's officially back in my hands, and I would like to do it. Like I said, this time the way it really deserves to be done, and get it some publicity and get it rolling.
All right. Well, it's let's hope that that can happen for you. So, getting back to the actual incidents, the research that you have done about this, and I know that considering where this happened in Texas, when it happened in Texas, the information really is difficult to come by. Was there any indication when you were doing the research on the reaction of the townspeople, the people who discover this? Because I mean, nowadays, if something like that would happen, I mean, we've all grown up with the idea of the possibility, I mean, the very good possibility of people from other planets and outer space and things like that. But in 1897, the idea was being kicked around at the time that there could be life on Mars, but that still was pretty far out there. I mean, do you think that was the first thing that came to people's mind when they came across this? That this is like a little man from Mars, or what?
Well, that's exactly what came across their mind, because it was actually written in the newspaper that the inhabitant, it was the fallen traveler was an inhabitant of the planet Mars. Well, now at the time they didn't realize that there was a whole lot more out there than Mars, and survivors from the time that were children were interviewed in the 70s during all this, when it was all fired up, and they described it. That they knew that it was and they, of course, they didn't have the verbiage at that time, but that it was an extraterrestrial that had lost control and crashed, and they buried him in the cemetery, and that it was really like the hush hush talk for decades and decades. But that was a time when information traveled by horseback and newspaper. Mm-hmm. So, it only got so far, and then it just sort of, the only people that remembered it were the people in the town.
So now, how have you run across any stories of UFO activity that was taking place at that same time around Texas or nearby areas?
Oh, there was tons of reports in the newspapers of UFO activity in 1897. Yes,
really. Uh-huh.
It was another wave, just like 1973. In the weeks before the Aurora crash, they reported, I think, 18 different counties in North Texas had reported sightings in the skies of strange objects with blinking lights, with small passengers on board. That was very common knowledge in the newspapers at that time. And like I said, in 18 different counties.
Now that's really interesting.
And this was a time there was no CBS evening news. So you didn't see that and go out and make up a story about it. This was a time that people didn't do that. So they really did see these things across the country, and all the stories sort of lined up with one another. They had no way of knowing what was going on 3 counties over. So for them to come up with the same story in all these different rural areas, what's the coincidence they all made it up at the same time?
Well, I know that here in Indiana, where I live, that there were numerous airship sightings reported in newspapers in 1897. It was very big news throughout the state. Though a lot of the alleged sightings that took place here in the Midwest, they reported seeing people who looked human. I mean, some of these airships would land, and the occupants would get out dressed in, the clothing of that era. A lot of times usually asking for water, food, or things like that, and telling stories that they were on their way to Cuba or Mexico or something like, places like that. So yeah, I mean, it's this was something that was it wasn't just located in Texas, but it had spread all across the United States.
Right. 1896, 1897 UFO reports were hot all across the country, just like 1973, 1974. The reports weren't just in Georgia and Florida; they were everywhere. They were across. They were across the world.
So now, years later, when the information got out that something had happened there in Aurora, was there an effort made to try to dig this poor little guy up from the cemetery?
Well, that was part of the deal in 1973 when all the craziness started. UFO hunters were going out there with picks and shovels and determined to dig him up and trying to get permits and all this, and they put armed guards out there to stop him from that. So no, there's varying reports. He was dug up. He wasn't dug up. The bottom line is, I believe, from all that I've researched and all the people I've talked to, and I've talked to people that actually are on the Aurora City Council today, and he is still there in that grave under that boulder, because they've done sound penetrating radar that show a small being badly decomposed about 5 feet beneath the surface where that boulder is.
So when was the boulder rolled over on top of the grave?
The boulder was put there about 3 years ago.
Okay.
They decided, okay, if we cut another fancy stone with an engraving of a spaceship on it, somebody's going to steal it and take it home and have a little trophy, and which is sad but true. So they put the boulder there. They figured, well, one, you can't pick it up and tote it out because they had to bring it in with a piece of machinery, and two, it marks the spot. So it was the logical thing to do. Somebody somewhere has the original 1897 stone. You can bet somebody has that in their trophy case from when it was stolen in the 70s, and it has never surfaced to this day.
Yeah, that's really a shame. I remember seeing a photograph, back in the 70s of that gravestone. I probably still have it somewhere in my files, here. So who knows where it is? But and I could see where the people who live there in Aurora would be pretty upset with all the people trying to get access to that cemetery, because it's there are a lot of families buried there.
Right.
You got yabos running around with shovels and picks trying to dig things up. So yeah, I don't blame them for doing what they did.
They've been burying their kinfolks in there for over 100 years. They don't want nobody out there digging in that graveyard. Mm-hmm. And I've been to the graveyard. It's a pretty good sized graveyard for such a small area, because Aurora is there is nothing there. Mm-hmm. There's no red light. There's no stop sign. There's no nothing. But I will give them credit. They, for years and years, they sort of poo-pooed the whole thing. Well, we don't want to talk about it. But nowadays, they have a nice little memorial built right on the side of the road, with a little UFO and a windmill and that kind of thing. It's like a park. You can stop there and look around and all. And then, they before the COVID started, they had started doing a little festival every year where they had, a little bit of activity, a little bit of something to commemorate the event.
Well, Kerry. It's a fascinating story, and I have a copy of your book and really enjoy it. So hopefully, we can help you find a new publisher, and other people can enjoy it as well. So, in the time that we have left, really quick, do you have a website or anything that people can look you up and find out more information about all this?
Well, I do have a Facebook page strictly for the novel and the story, and it is, of course, called Traveler, the Aurora, Texas crash of 1897. So, and I do get, a couple dozen people a week like it and look at it, and also anybody wants to go there, they can see some of the illustrations from the novel and hear about it, and can contact me through there.
All right, fantastic, and that's easily found. Just to let everybody know out there, it's easily found using Google, because I found her out right away, Kerry. So it's very easy.
Oh yeah, and it's easy.
Yeah. Okay, and Tim Beckley, real quick, Alien Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just out this week, Aliens Lives Matter. It's okay to be gray, and you're working on one now that you're almost done with. The solved mysteries of time, space, UFOs, time, space, and what the hell do
they? Solve mystery of space, time, and UFOs.
I knew it all along. And don't forget our YouTube channel, Mr. UFO's Secret Files. We are catching up slowly but surely, thanks to Michelle, who is putting a great effort into posting our shows and adding a little bit of drama to them. And don't forget to come back every week here at KCORradio.com, and our shows are archived as well, and they're free, and we've probably got about 400 interviews, so just get to it and enjoy the show and tell everybody about it.
All right, thanks, Kerry. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure.
You've been listening to Exploring the Bazaar with hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz. They're taking back the night by jetting non-stop across the cosmos in search of the truly bizarre and totally unexplained, with you as their co-pilot. Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on Exploring the Bazaar and hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz, check out their KCOR Digital Radio Network page. Follow their YouTube channel at MRUFO 1100. Exploring the Bazaar.